most people have breathing problems, why would that not then be one of the first things you check
Exactly.
a child who is struggling
Exactly.
with school, with behavior,
Yeah.
and mesh those two thoughts? Most people have breathing problems. My child is struggling. Let's get a sleep test. Let's
Exactly.
check his airway.
Welcome to the Alfie podcast. This is a special episode. It's episode number 24, just like Kobe, the Mamba number. And so fitting that we have our dear friends and special guests, Victor and Sydney Avis. Welcome, episode number 24.
Thank you. We're honored.
We're honored, and for us it's a big weekend because we're in Houston, and tomorrow night our team, Duke University, plays Houston in the Final Four.
Yeah.
And so we were sure on the plane to Houston we were repping Duke big time. We had on our Duke sweatshirts and T-shirts. We wanted to make sure everybody knows we're coming to Houston.
Did you have any other Dukies on the flight?
No other Dukies. I haven't even seen that many Houston fans. I've seen an Auburn fan. But that's it. I haven't seen anyone repping anything.
But I will, Kobe didn't go to college. He went right from high school
He did.
to the NBA. Do you know what he says if he did go to college, where he was going?
I do. He was going to play for Coach K.
Exactly. So it's really why I like you, David, because you're a Kobe fan and he's a Duke fan. And so we get along.
Exactly. The correlation. I did see that. I think they were really good friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Didn't he coach him at the Olympics?
Yeah.
yeah, he did.
Yeah.
Right.
He did. And JJ Redick was there around that time, right?
Yeah.
Who's the Lakers coach now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think he was a favorite of Coach K's, and Kobe had a little envy of that at the time.
Got it.
I always forget that he is now the coach of the Lakers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That
Wow.
is crazy.
All right, so let's talk about
Let's talk about
Airway and why you guys are here.
Yeah.
Sure.
Start us off, Dad.
Well, I at some point in Sydney's journey, when it became clear that double jaw surgery might be the way to help her feel her best, because there was never a day when Sydney woke up and I said, "Hey, Sid, how you feeling?" And she would say, exhausted, tired, and you could just see it on her face. So through surgery, as Sydney will talk about, she's basically been able to reclaim her life.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason we're here is because I was looking, as we've been making this documentary for the last 8 years, and we're in post-production, it'll be finished this year. I was looking for the best surgeon who would represent what's possible in orthodontic surgery, and you are that person. I think what you have done in terms of using the best of technology, planning, digital planning, and your surgical skills to reduce surgical time from like 7 to 8 hours down to 1 hour, speeding up recovery, getting predictable results. I wanted the world to see that because it sets the bar for what I hope every orthodontic surgeon aspires to, and hopefully they improve upon the Alfie method. But for right now, you represent, as far as I can tell, the best.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So much to dive into there, because we're talking about double jaw surgery, 1 hour double jaw surgery.
Yeah.
But there was a documentary. Yeah, so we'll get into all that. But there was a big journey before that. Double jaw surgery took a while to get to, and this is what I'm really interested in talking about, because Victor, I want to hear, how did this journey start for you? Because I know that it was a process. It's not something that any of us learn in school or in practice or in continuing education. Now it's out there. Now we're teaching them in CEs, and still not in the schools really. But it wasn't obvious to anyone. But you were very early in that, and it's amazing. You have a very personal connection, obviously, with your daughter, Sydney, that I think helped you get there. But take it from the beginning, and then I want to hear from Sydney, too, about that process.
I'm a third-generation dentist. Our practice has been on the same block for 102 years, and I learned so much from my dad, who just recently passed away at 95, almost 96, just 2 months ago, almost to the date. Mm-hmm. And And my dad early on said to me, you know, a dental degree is a license to learn. And he not only encouraged me to learn, we practiced together. And so it was basically whatever course I wanted to go on, he was like, go, learn. And so and I loved it. I was an avid participant and traveled all over trying to learn from the best people. So with that, it was in 2008 I decided to go back to learn orthodontics because they keep it, as you know, kind of a black box to dental students.
Oh, yeah. I remember that. It was like 1 hour of this, feel this wire.
Right. Enough to know, like, wow, that's totally mysterious. And anytime
Correct.
somebody has crowded teeth or buck teeth or whatever, send them to the orthodontist. And then as you mature as a dentist, some of what you would get back was not what you thought. And then, so I wanted to uncover that black box just because I have a curiosity. And I didn't know that would be the beginnings of really Sydney's march to a better life. But I finished the ortho program after 2 years. It was conventional ortho. A friend of mine said, go see John Mew or listen to John Mew. He's in England. And I listened to him on a YouTube, and I was like, wow, if he's right, then orthodontics is retracting people, not only maybe making worse faces, but then when I went out to see John and Michael Mew in England, there was this book, Close Your Mouth. And I was like, what the hell is this all about? It was all about breathing. And I found myself walking from Croydon to Purley. It was about 1.5 miles with my lab technician, Paul, and we were trying to walk with our lips together and breathe through our nose. And so
Novel idea.
I never heard of such a thing. And like, how does this relate to dentistry and why orthodontics? And the whole thing blew me away, but also attracted me. And it was then that I started to put things together, that orthodontics and extracting teeth and making faces basically look pushed in as if you punched in the lower face was potentially having harm to the airway. And then started to see maybe that in Sydney's case, what was going on with always being exhausted had to do with the fact that she grew up allergic to our black Labrador retrievers, and I never took it. It was so she couldn't breathe through her nose. Big deal.
Right.
And then I started to say maybe it is a big deal, and that ultimately led us to pursue, is there a sleep problem? And she was really dismissed that it was mild.
Yeah.
And I'm like thinking, I know my daughter. She doesn't want to feel like this and look like this and have anxiety, and cognitively learning was challenging. And I didn't know it was all a part of it, but I can tell you now that she's really physiologically and anatomically had her airway corrected. The cognitive change, the emotional change, behavioral, her being able to get good sleep and feel rested, it's the most amazing transition I've ever seen. So to finalize this summary is that somewhere along the lines, very early on, I said, Sydney, you're a healthy vegan, you teach yoga, you meditate, basically for a human on the four bases of health, which is exercise, nutrition, stress management, and sleep. You're knocking it out of the park on 3 out of the 4. If we correct your sleep and you become a different person, what a story that would be. And Sydney said, what do you have in mind? I said, well, we should film it. And she said, with what? And I said, well, my iPhone. She said, what are you going to do with that? And so the rest is history. We engaged friends who have won 17 Emmy Awards. We prospectively filmed her journey, and now the journey of probably, 30 other stories with multiple, tops in their profession like yourself, to help the world understand and have a greater awareness about airway disorders, how it can disrupt your life, how correcting it could change the trajectory of somebody's life. And so we're so excited. We're near the end of the documentary process, and then our next step is making sure that millions see this, because we think it can change lives for millions of people.
Yeah, I'm very excited. I think that's very true. One of our missions of this podcast is really to spread the awareness and get that message out and make it really mainstream. So the documentary is going to hopefully be a huge bang.
Yes.
In that space.
Yeah. That's the hope. That's the plan.
Yeah.
And I think the other big thing to mention is that through your journey and my journey together, we didn't even start thinking that this could be an airway or a sleep issue till I was 25.
Yeah.
So what we know now and what you know as a dentist now, we could have caught this so much earlier and maybe even
Absolutely.
prevented it.
Yeah.
And I think that's
exciting.
crucial as well. And that gives hope to so many people. And that's
Yeah.
why sharing this knowledge and creating this awareness is such a necessity.
More important than taking care of our children.
Yeah.
Right. And let's talk about this. 90% up to 90% of kids, I think, are undiagnosed, that have sleep disorders.
Mm-hmm.
They're completely undiagnosed. If they have sleep disorders and sleep problems, they're 6 times more likely to have ADHD and learning disabilities in school. These numbers may be actually very conservative, right?
Mm-hmm.
So people are really struggling. 3.5 million kids right now in the U.S. are taking medicine for ADHD. The impact is tremendous. And anyone that's listening that has a kid that's struggling,
We got to look deeper.
You gotta
There could
look
be
deeper.
something else going on
right?
here.
You got to look deeper. So for you, Victor, what year was it that this happened, that you went to England to meet John Mew?
Yeah, I'd say it's about 2011 or 12
Okay.
that I went out there.
Amazing. So now kids are familiar with mewing.
Right.
This is where it came from. Actually, my son is 11 now, and he plays baseball, and I was watching a game, and I was standing by the dugout, and I can hear the kids doing this to each other and talking about mewing. Yeah, and they're 10 years old.
We
It's
get
funny.
a lot of stories. My sister's a third grade teacher,
Yeah.
and she hears it from her kids, and she's like, "Dr. Mew is at my house," and they're like, "Who is that?" They don't
Right.
correlate
Connect
the
it.
two, but
Yeah.
it's taking off for
It
sure.
is. So this was in 2011. How old was Sydney?
You born in
92.
92. So 2002, about 19.
About 19.
Yeah, so,
So
now
this-
it's 6 years after that.
Yeah.
So I first go out to meet John and Michael Mew, and I go out there 3 times over the course of about 6 to 9 months. And to Sydney's point, I think what ultimately drives me is that I'm so upset that with all the education I did,
Yeah.
that I knew nothing about how, as a dentist, I could recognize early on in children an airway disorder and at least suggest that it gets checked. I knew
Yeah.
nothing about it, so that I missed it totally in Sydney.
Yeah.
And so I didn't connect her asthma, her anxiety, her hypothyroidism. She was on, thyroid medication for her thyroid,
Right.
anxiety. It was, meditate and
Asthma medication.
asthma medication. Everybody was treating symptoms, and
Right.
I was a part of it because I didn't have better education. And so that's really part of this journey. Is I want the awareness to be so great amongst the lay population, people who
Yeah.
are not doctors,
Right.
that when they go see their doctor, they're demanding a level of care which requires
Yeah.
those physicians and those dentists and those orthodontists to be educated so that they can meet this need. Because, as you said, it's tens of millions. There's a research paper by that was commissioned by a drug company, but they're estimating in the world of up to 1 billion people have obstructive sleep apnea, which
Right.
is only one of the airway disorders.
Right.
It doesn't even take into account
And that's
upper
really
airway
end
resistance.
stage.
End stage.
We're talking about end
Right.
stage. And
Right.
if you subscribe to the premise that our jaws are smaller, which I think is an easy subscription to make because you just have to look at facts and data. And our great ancestors didn't need braces and had space for their teeth, and now we don't. So if you just subscribe to that premise, everybody has an airway problem, right? By default, with very few exception. So that 1 billion end stage disease, which is obstructive sleep apnea, is only representing that end stage. And that's a lot of people,
It's a lot of people.
right?
And
How many people are there in the world?
I don't know the number.
8 billion? Yeah, so 1/8 have recognized
Sleep apnea.
end stage,
Right.
right? And most are even undiagnosed. So it's fair to make that argument. I think it's a very fair argument to say that everybody falls in that spectrum of breathing problems. And then we don't have to normalize all these chronic illnesses that people have as a separate thing, right? It's like we just accept that, okay, asthma, autoimmune conditions, thyroid issues, anxiety, depression. People with sleep disorder breathing are 6 times more likely to have depression, right? But no psychiatrist is even looking at airway disease. Right. But I think this message alone says that, hey, most people are going to have breathing problems, and these breathing problems can contribute to so many different things. And now these breathing problems are preventable, really, or treatable, depending on what age we catch them.
And just picking off that, since we know most people have breathing problems, why would that not then be one of the first things you check
Exactly.
a child who is struggling
Exactly.
with school, with behavior,
Yeah.
and mesh those two thoughts? Most people have breathing problems. My child is struggling. Let's get a sleep test. Let's
Exactly.
check his airway for enlarged tonsils, anything that might be obstructing.
Right.
It's low-hanging fruit, but
Very.
this is not
Yeah.
the norm, but we're changing that. That's
Yeah.
the
And it
goal
goes
here.
to that point where you heard about, hey, we should be breathing through our nose. The fact that that was a novel idea to a doctor
Right.
who studied anatomy and physiology, and to think that, oh yeah, we shouldn't be breathing through our mouth. I read something that mouth breathing in children will decrease oxygen by 20% to the brain.
And when you think about how many things are causing the noses to be clogged,
Yes.
moving indoors, allergies to carpets, to pets, to foods. Our food changed so much is making mouth breathing somewhat of a necessity.
Yeah.
And
And the daycare environments, the school environments. We have 2 parents that are in the workforce now. So many environmental things that are new to humans
Right.
that we
Right.
take for granted, because we don't zoom out and say, hey, what was life like 300 years ago, 500 years ago, 5,000 years ago?
right.
We're in this bubble.
Yeah.
Right. And it's become completely normalized. You
Yes.
see all these kids with their mouth hanging open. They're stuffy. Oh, they just have
All
a
the
cold. Well, we need to, if they have a cold all the time, they're never breathing through their nose. And there's an
Correct.
issue here. And
Yeah.
waiting for them to grow out of this is not
Yeah.
going to cut it
Right.
because it's going to be too late. And then they're going to be struggling.
Yeah.
I mean, my middle daughter Sam's a 3rd grade teacher in Brooklyn. And so she could suggest a child get an IEP, which is an individualized education plan,
Right.
which is quite an intense process of having a neuropsychologist evaluate. So there's expense. And then if they qualify, then they get, potentially allowed more leeway in terms of time for tests, maybe more individualized attention. And yet Sam could not suggest to an administrator or a parent, I see young David hanging his mouth open. I think he should have
Absolutely.
a sleep study. That
Yeah.
is not allowed. And,
Yeah.
she's so aware of this whole airway piece. And so
Yeah.
it's so interesting that it's not only not normalized, that it's actually counter culture that you could even suggest as
Yeah.
a teacher that your child be evaluated.
And we're talking about well-being of children
Right.
for professionals whose life is to take care of children.
Right.
Right. Which is very interesting.
And cognitive development. I mean,
Correct.
what is the
And cognitive
impact
development of all things.
night after night getting restful, restorative sleep?
Yeah.
Your ability to learn. I mean, I think you should talk about your experience as a student.
But I will, but looking at teachers, they see that these kids so much concentrating, they could be the perfect people to raise that red flag.
Yes. They're there in the classrooms with the
Yeah,
kids.
your child is tired every morning. They're
Correct.
cranky. They're
So
having
many signs.
mood troubles.
Yeah.
When they
can't
sitting
focus.
there, their mouth is hanging open. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if people were more aware,
Yes.
then so many kids would be positively impacted.
Yes, I agree. So Sydney, for you now looking back at it, hindsight's 2020.
Right.
But when do you start recognizing early on the effects of this breathing issue and your sleep, and what were those symptoms and what stages?
Yeah, of course. Like you said, hindsight's 2020. But when I look back at pictures of me as a kid, I mean, hello, I have an airway disorder.
Right now,
You know, now we would say, of course, let's get this kid some help.
Right.
But I had huge bags under my eyes. I don't think my lips ever touched. My mouth was always hanging open. I was allergic to the dog. I had asthma. I had severe gut issues. I was extremely cranky all the time. And then as I got older, anxiety presented itself, mental health struggles, and then learning. Learning was a huge hurdle for me.
Yeah.
School in general was just really, really tough. I wanted
difficult.
to hide in the background. I didn't want to be called upon because even if I felt like I was working so hard and doing the readings and studying, but I would sit down to take the quiz the next day and I couldn't remember what I read.
And this was never a lack of desire or interest or ambition.
No, I wanted to learn, but after a while I got really discouraged because I applied myself.
Yeah.
And I worked so hard and the grades never showed that. It looked like I didn't care.
Right.
And after a time, I think I gave up a little bit because I was like, what is the point? I'm working so hard, but
you're not seeing results.
You don't see results at all. And even into, I mean, I didn't want to go to college because I hated school because it was just a place where I felt stupid.
Yeah.
But I went to school, and I remember even my freshman year, I was studying to be a teacher because I thought that's what I wanted to do. And I had a teacher come up to me and say, you shouldn't be doing this. You're not focused enough. You need to take time off. And that was after a year I had just taken time off. And I was like, I can't. I have to do this. And then I gave up on the education route because I was, again, discouraged by someone saying that I wasn't focused or I couldn't concentrate or this wasn't the path for me. Now I'm like, no one was like, hey, this person might need some help or some, you know, special attention or extra time. Nothing. It was just like, you can't do this.
Yeah.
And post-surgery now, it's just like my brain works in a different way. And I think about the kids who are struggling now and if they got the help, how different their lives would look. Confidence, how they saw themselves, what they did in the world, it would just be completely different. And, you know, I'm so grateful for the chance that I got now, but what would have happened if this was, you know, 30 years ago?
Yeah, maybe meant to be and a blessing because you get to educate the world now.
Yeah,
and make a huge impact.
It's all how it's supposed to be.
Exactly.
But you just have to think like, what if? But it's okay. I'm happy.
Yeah.
I'm happy. I'm healthy. I'm
forward.
lucky. Yes.
And then hopefully helping, you know, future Sydneys of the world not to have to do what you did.
Exactly. It's when I see kids now struggling and parents are like, they'll grow out of it. I'm like, they're not going to.
Yeah.
We got to address it now.
An interesting observation I made yesterday. Gigi, you were there. My son's in 5th grade and we went to a 5th grade play. So it's an entire class. It was an amazing production actually. But, you know, all the kids had different roles and responsibilities. Some of them had small parts with one line or a couple lines. And then obviously there were a few leads in the play and a main lead in the play. It was Alice in the Wonderland. And Alice was the main lead and had to really perform at a high level in terms of singing, memorizing huge scripts at that age and performing. And she did a really tremendous job. I was looking at all the faces in this play and she had the most developed face, was breathing through her nose the entire play while she wasn't performing, while all the other kids weren't as fortunate, I think. But thinking about it now, as you talk about the ability to perform and learn, she was that's why she got that role, right? She was seen as a kid that, one, had a great appearance to be a lead, And that also matched her ability to sing extremely well, perform extremely well, and memorize all these lines. It was really impressive. But it can't be an accident that she was the best nasal breather of the group for these kids.
Yeah. It's a great observation. I think that the ability for some people to compensate better than others is something that sometimes clouds thing. I saw an NBA player, I won't mention his name, but his face is so long and so protruded. And I'm saying to myself, almost the opposite of what you're saying. Wow, amazing what he's achieved athletically.
Yes.
In spite of this clear anatomical airway disorder.
Right.
And at what point doesn't he compensate as well? And who knows even now how much it must be interfering, traveling, having all these different, time zone changes, and then this clear face that doesn't support good breathing. So I think sometimes people seem to be getting away with it until they're not.
Until
all
they're
of a
not.
sudden they
At
have
some
a stroke
point,
or a heart
it
attack.
catches up.
Right.
Correct. And, as a surgeon, I see patients of all ages doing jaw surgery. I did one as a kid as early as 7, but usually teenagers to patients, well into their 60s. So see a full spectrum. But around 30 or 40 is the biggest percentage of patients that I see that are come in and they're struggling. And there's a huge difference in my 30s and 40s year olds than the ones in their teens and 20s. And you're right, something happens along that age that finally the compensations start to break down. Because I see the same population, the same characteristics in a 20, 25-year-old, and they have symptoms, but they're not as aware of their symptoms. Or they attribute it as, well, I think I can breathe okay, or I think I sleep well, and then we get a sleep study, they're not. But their ability to power through at some point stops, and it seems to stop around the mid-30s in most patients, which is interesting because that's when, talking about NBA, most premier players retire in their early to mid-30s, even the best conditioned ones. Can't be a coincidence.
Yeah, and but some of the great runners, actually hit their peak in their 30s, but those are typically from other countries where their jaw development is quite different from what we see in America, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
And I think that's also, I sent a patient to you recently who's in her 60s.
Yeah.
And again, you would look in terms of she's been successful. She was a lawyer, successful in her career. But she actually has said to me that her parents who are in their 90s and having cognitive decline, that she's worried that not treating this. And I bring it up to say that it's a fear of mine is that people wait too long because it's harder even anatomically to make those corrections in 60s. Healing's harder. Talk about that a little bit.
Recoveries are more difficult. Healing is harder. We have patients in their 60s and they do well, but their recoveries are not the same at all. And as a surgeon, we want to get to them earlier. The earlier, the better. But it's the same thing. We think about when Mike Tyson, who's one of the best boxers of all time, and who's going up against a young Jake or Logan. One of the
Jake Paul, Logan Paul, one of them.
One of them. But everybody's worried. For him, including me as a physician, because what can he take the hits? Is he going to recover as well? And the truth is that it is more difficult to get through these things. So you're absolutely right.
I think the
younger the better.
And the other part of younger is better is like damage is being done. So when you fix it, how much of that damage?
Correct. That's a huge thing because at this point, the heart is not as healthy. The lungs are not as healthy. Neurological wiring takes a lot longer to, rewire as an
What do they say? The brain is developed by what age?
It's 8 or something like that. That 90% of the neural connections are made by age 8. So
if they're not breathing and sleeping, how is that brain developing?
Right. It takes a toll.
Yeah,
for sure. We want to get there earlier.
Early is better, and even from a surgical perspective, I do believe I see more than I would like of people trying lots of different things
Yes.
to overcome this.
Yeah.
And if it's clear that there's an anatomical issue like
fix
you
it.
had, for goodness sake,
Go right to it.
If you
Yeah.
can fix it, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I have most of my patients, they've all tried everything, right? They've gone through 3 rounds of ortho. It's never going to work because the tongue is going to push the teeth right back out. They've tried Inspire, which I don't love. I have so many patients that try that. But all these things are really trying to tackle one little part of the picture. And then it ends up just kicking the ball, extra time, extra money, extra procedures. And in the end, they're going to end up hopefully opening the airway with double jaw surgery. Appliances can take away. There's a place for these things.
Yeah.
For sure. I believe in them. I've done appliances. There are people that are maybe not great candidates for jaw surgery where these things can help. But if someone is able to do the jaw surgery, going to it and addressing it, I completely believe in. Obviously with some bias, but completely believe in.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I tried so much.
Yeah.
I always start with lifestyle and eating and, meditating and exercise. But I worked so hard at that and I did not feel better. Every day I was exhausted.
Yeah.
I was just like getting through the day. It wasn't fun. Like life was just like a struggle.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can't out lifestyle an anatomical issue.
Yeah, definitely.
And not that lifestyle is crucial,
Definitely.
but
you still need to
sometimes
do all
you
the
need,
things right.
Yeah.
Right. Like I stopped drinking alcohol
Same.
completely. I used to enjoy it, but stopped completely. I try to exercise. We have a gym here. Try to exercise all the time.
Yeah.
So those things are still important. And I encourage all patients to still practice all the biohacking before and after. But you're right. And the interesting thing about that is all of biohacking is trying to get oxygen to the cells. Every single tool, right?
Right. And if you can't do that, all those biohacks are not going to work for you.
But exactly. Like it's optimizing delivery to the cells, right? That's what the supplements are doing. Adequate hormone replacement is doing. Exercise is doing. Cold plunge, red light, grounding. All of it is really to get the cellular metabolism up, which is really oxygen delivery and ATP production. But you still need to get oxygen into the body first. And the only way to do that is through the mouth or the nose, preferably the nose. And it has to get through the pharynx, right? Through the upper airway, which is all restricted by the jaws. So if you have a cocktail straw to get oxygen through to supply the entire body, doesn't matter what you do, right? I mean, it's going to matter a little bit. It's going to make a dent in it. But if you can't get oxygen into the system, none of that's going to be
and
functional.
I think, too, inflammation. I think there's so many things that medicine, Eastern and Western, disagree upon. But I don't think it is about inflammation. I think everybody went from that focal infection theory to recognizing that in modern day our chronic diseases are diseases of inflammation. And so when you're breathing with too much effort and you're disrupting your sleep, the downstream effect is inflammation. And so it's not supporting health, it's supporting disease. And whatever your Achilles heel might be, it might be cancer, it might be heart disease.
Yes.
But that inflammatory response, which is happening with every breath and with every night of not getting sleep, is supporting some sort of a chronic disease pathway or multiple.
Right.
And we know it. We know it's
We do.
related to diabetes. We know it's related to heart attack and stroke.
The data's there. The studies have been made.
Right. So there's no doubt about it that this lack of disrupted sleep is causing these chronic health issues.
Right.
And even asthma. I had a pulmonologist friend. He's been one of New York City's top doctors for many years. He just retired, Lester. And I said, Lester, talk to me about asthma and sleep.
Yeah.
And his wife's an oncology surgeon who sits on our board. because I was always curious, because Sydney struggled early on with asthma. And what I take away, it's really kind of a chicken and egg, but if you're breathing through your mouth, you're breathing air that's not conditioned, it's not filtered, it's not
Correct.
warmed, it's not humidified. So when it goes into the lungs,
Yeah.
asthma is a reactive disease to...
Absolutely.
And so all of a sudden you have a reaction for those who are susceptible,
Yeah.
and now you have asthma, which
Right.
is a lower airway responds to inflammation or to pathogens. And
Yes.
so if you're nasal breathing, maybe you never get that asthma.
Yeah.
And so now when you have asthma, all of a sudden it's harder to breathe. What do? You breathe through your mouth because you can't get enough through your nose. So it's and it's so, asthma amongst children is so common.
Yes.
And rarely have I ever heard people first saying, hey, the response to asthma is we got to restore nasal breathing.
Yeah. So how's your asthma symptoms now?
I mean, I don't take any medication for asthma. I stopped
you did
that
prior?
I did. I
Okay.
stopped it in college because it was also impacting my mental health. And it impacted the amount of cavities I was having. Between
Yeah.
that and mouth breathing, it was...
Absolutely. Detrimental.
But with the
to
healthy
oral
diet,
health.
it was shocking how many cavities I
Yeah.
had. But so now...
and a dental family.
Yeah, and my dad's a dentist, and I get cleaned way more than...
Right.
Let's say I think she might have 4 teeth that have had gold inlays in it, but relative to everybody else, it was
Correct.
so astronomical. So
Yes.
the asthma medication's drying out her mouth. She's breathing through
Yeah.
her mouth. So the whole microbiome
Right.
definitely impacting
Definitely
Sydney
impacted.
different than the rest, my other 2 children.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now I just have like my emergency inhaler that I rarely have to
Rarely.
use. And so often if I feel like getting a little bit tight, I'm like, oh, I'm probably mouth breathing. And if I just
Interesting.
concentrate, then I can usually calm it down
That's
without
unbelievable.
the
Yeah.
puffer.
Yeah, that's a great point about the air, unfiltered, unhumidified, all these things, because it's going straight from the mouth. It's not, doesn't have the process of filtration through the nose, and you have basically dirty air, and it's hard to perceive the dirtiness of that air, but you put that through a magnifying. If you put a magnifying right here and see how many particles are in the air we breathe, it's and mites and bugs and all these things that you can't see, it's tremendous. And what happens is that goes straight to the lungs. The lungs are basically a vascular organ. Their job is gas exchange. So there's a direct access of all those dirty particles going straight into the blood supply, because that's what the lungs are doing. It's a blood supply organ. We think of it as an air organ, but it's really a blood supply organ for our entire body, because its purpose is to exchange gases, right? And you have this immense capillary network, which are tiny, tiny blood vessels, but the makeup of that capillary network is a huge surface area of basically your body taking in particles. So if you have dirty particles, basically it's going straight into your bloodstream. And how much inflammation, what has to happen then, right? What happens when offensive particles get into the bloodstream? Let's say you get a cut on your skin and bacteria goes into the bloodstream. The body has an immune system which has to fight those things. So if you have dirty particles going straight into the bloodstream in your lungs all the time, unfiltered, it makes total sense that your immune system is going to be shocked, right? And your
Absolutely.
inflammatory markers are going to be higher. It has to be, because basically you're introducing pathogens all the time and your body's just fighting. It's always at war.
Yeah. I mean, we watch home videos sometimes, and almost in every home video, I'm homesick from school. I was sick often.
So you've
And-
watched a lot of, was it Bob Parker?
Oh, what is that the painter?
No. What was that show? The Price is Right.
I don't know. I was watching VHS something. Bob Ross. I was home all the time. Now, I, knock on wood, hardly get sick. I think the last time I was sick was here a year ago.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So it's game changer, nasal breathing. And I think about asthma, it like brought me back. I just remember being in detention because I had some behavior issues and having
Right.
to do a nebulizer treatment because I was getting ready for my basketball game.
Yeah.
So it's just like not who I am now, getting detention, having to do breathing treatment to then
Yeah.
go play. It's like that just wouldn't be the case for me now.
Yeah.
When did you do your last nebulizer treatment?
Probably, I don't know. I mean, in high school, I think.
So it's a big difference, and the only thing that changed was Sydney's breathing because of changing her
Correct.
anatomy.
And
That's the
so much of
only
your
thing.
physiology, cognition.
my
You're
gut,
super productive now.
my gut health is, I couldn't eat anything for
Yeah.
a while.
That's when Johnny talks about his gut health, actually.
Really. It's
It's
changed.
changed, yeah.
Yeah, I went to so many different doctors. I think I have IBS. I think I have this. I can't eat anything. I get bloated. It looks like there's an alien in my stomach.
Yeah.
Could not figure it out. Did
Yeah.
so many elimination diets. And then I fixed my breathing and my sleep. And now I'm like, okay, remember, you have to eat healthfully. Where before it wasn't
Right.
even a choice at that point. I had to eat so clean.
Right.
Now it's like, okay, I could have that cupcake and not feel
Yeah.
terrible. So I have to remind myself.
Yeah. Yeah. You've been so generous, both of you, in sharing your health and your journey. I think, I appreciate that. I think a lot of people appreciate that, and it's for the better.
It's for the better.
It's making people aware.
That's the hope. And I feel like it looks different in everyone. And some
Yes.
things you might think, oh, that's just normal or everyone has that. But the more we can talk about
Yeah.
these different
People are struggling with this
issues,
stuff,
yeah, and people might
Yeah.
latch on like, oh, that kind of sounds like my gut issues.
right? Yes.
Maybe there's something here that I haven't explored yet.
Yeah.
And it could be like their key to
Yeah.
unlock their health.
Are there medications you were on pre-surgery that you were able to come off of?
Definitely came off any asthma meds. The only meds that I'm on from before and now is still my thyroid
That's it,
medication.
yeah.
And I tried to come off them, but it was pretty soon after my
Yeah.
surgery, so I could retry that again. And
Yeah.
but my levels have all been good. I'm on like the lowest dose.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really the only thing.
Do
Yeah.
you see a difference in anxiety?
Yes, I would say this week my anxiety's not been great, so it's hard. But I used to have panic attacks like regularly,
Yes.
and that is not the case for me
No.
at all anymore. And it's I can like reason with myself now, where before just things felt so out of control, and it was just pure panic.
Yeah.
Where even now, I wouldn't say like my anxiety is zero. It's still there, but I can make sense of it a little bit more.
Yeah.
And just say, okay, this is probably why this is happening. Where before I didn't even have the capability, it feels like, to understand my emotions or understand what was going on
Yeah.
for me.
You know, it's interesting as you say panic attacks, because so many, I hear that a lot, that, you know, after the airways treated, panic attacks go away. And you think about, you know, what was grandma's recipe for a panic attack? It's like, take a deep breath, right?
Yeah.
Breathe. It was always focus on your breathing.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
I remember I was a camp counselor for so long, and I had one camper who every night she had a panic attack. And at this point, I hadn't had my surgery. It wasn't even on, I didn't even know the possibilities, but I was learning about breathing and airway. And we'd go and sit outside, and I'd have her breathe through her nose and exhale through her nose. And she would always go to her mouth. And I'm like, no, just keep it in the nasal passage, in and out. And it would calm her down.
Yeah.
That, and I'd have to tell her stories, but then
Yeah.
she would calm
Right.
down and go to bed.
That's awesome.
But I think it's nice, you know, you're out of your OR, you're not in your clinic, because there's a whole medical legal thing that surrounds you and I as doctors that, you know, you can't overpromise.
Yes.
But now we're talking casually, and Sydney's telling her real life story.
Right.
There's so many benefits of restoring sleep and
So many.
nasal breathing, and it is different for different people.
Right.
But
it's not going to solve all problems.
Right.
We're still human
right
and have
But
human
it-
problems.
But it can have far more impact than
Yeah.
just getting a better night's sleep,
Mm-hmm.
because so much is happening that we spend
Definitely.
1/3 of our life sleeping.
Yes.
So much repair of the body happens during that time.
So critical.
And if you restore it, who knows for the person sitting in front of you
Right.
or me what that can do in their
Yeah.
lives. And it can be tremendously impactful. I witnessed it as a dad with Sydney, and that's why we're doing it. I feel so fortunate. When I hear Sydney talk, and again, it's just my daughter, but you know, out there in this world, there's tens of
So many.
millions of people like Sydney that are so struggling.
Yeah.
And nobody's recognizing it because they're either young or they're pretty or they're doing well,
Right.
or they're not doing well and they're discarded as, this is just a
Right.
dumb child. And my
Right.
goodness, if you give their body a chance by helping them sleep better,
Yeah.
and
Tap
just-
into that brain.
yeah. Dave, just talk and you do such a good job, an excellent job of relating to people in non-technical. But, I interchange breathing and sleep.
Yeah.
And just talk how you would like to explain what's the relationship. Because breathing is something I'm doing 24/7. Sleeping is just something I'm doing unconsciously at night. So why am I interchanging it?
Yeah. So a lot of that is really anatomical, because when we're awake and upright and our muscles have tone, even with small jaws or small airways, our skeletal system is in a position where it's still opening up that airway, right? When we go to sleep, gravity is changed. We're no longer standing upright. We're laying on our backs, which a lot of people can't do. And this explains why they can't do it, right? So that tongue falls back just from laying down. So that's one thing. The other thing that happens when we're supposed to sleep is that the muscles are supposed to relax. So that tone where they're active and their defenses are up from going through the challenge of a day are not supposed to be there when we're sleeping. We're supposed to relax. And the deeper we get into sleep, the more the muscles relax. So that's when the impact of a small airway, which is really an anatomical argument, gets compromised, because it gets compromised by position. And then as you sleep, and you're supposed to get restorative sleep, the muscles relax, the airway is going to close off in these people that had such a low threshold to closing off to begin with. So what happens is, one, you get interrupted sleep, because if you do collapse and close, you're going to wake yourself up multiple times, and people have arousals, and they're not even usually conscious arousals, right? The other thing that happens is you may be asleep 14 hours, but never getting restorative sleep because you're fighting the entire time to keep it open. So just like you're awake and your defenses are up and your muscle tone is up to keep that open, in your sleep, you're asleep, but you're not getting restorative sleep. Instead, you're clenching your teeth, you're posturing your neck, you're tossing and turning, and that puts so much forces on the skeletal system. That's why people have so much TMJ pain, neck pain, shoulder pain. But as a result of the sleep is never restorative. So these people sleep 12, 14, you can sleep 18 hours and they still don't feel good when they wake up. It's still snoozing their alarm. Does that answer it?
Yeah. I think because we use them interchangeably, but the
Correct.
breathing, which you can compensate for when you're awake, when you fall asleep, between gravity and being unconscious, the
Yes.
breathing can stop.
Correct.
Where during the day, it doesn't stop because
Yeah.
you're awake and you're upright. And so that breathing process, which we really take for granted, because if we're alive, we're breathing,
Correct.
it can really get, as you always say, amplified or magnified during the nighttime.
And then the other side to that is, like, you're right. It's manifested in its sleep. Sleep is manifested because of those factors. But also on the awake side, a lot of these same people will notice it in exertion, right? Walking, they're able to compensate, but running upstairs or trying to run a mile, most people have a really hard time. They struggle with breathing, right? So it's both those sides of the spectrum where it becomes notable, but we're not really aware of those things. We're only aware of the part in the middle where we think we're fine walking about the day. You said we sleep 1/3 of our lives. It's such an interesting thing, right? And Matthew Walker writes this really well. You read that book? Well, it's one of my favorite books.
Yeah.
I think I quote it every time we have a podcast. But that was so like a light bulb for me, because he articulates it so well. It's like, natural selection would not have it that 1/3 of our day, our defenses are down, lying on the ground, exposed to wild prey and opposition, right? Like, imagine 1/3 of the day you're just come come steal from me, come kill me
Right.
in
Your
the jungle,
food.
right?
Yeah.
I'm food. So natural selection would be so heavily against that we do this a third of our day, that it has to be so pivotal, so important of a function for us to be asleep that it's outweighs how vulnerable sleep is. That's so interesting.
I know it. And we also know it intuitively when you're sick with the flu or cold. What do you need? You need sleep. You
Right.
stay home from work or you stay home
You
from
need
school
sleep.
and you sleep
Yeah.
12 to 14 hours a day to recover. So
Right.
it's like intuitive. We know this, and yet we think, right, we're from the city that never sleeps. You think
Yes.
in New York that you can get away with less and you just have to be driving, whether it be work, school, sociability. And it's not a cheat code. It's really you're setting yourself up for, you
Yeah.
know, not
Yeah.
doing better.
Yeah.
So if only, there's so many people out listening to this and sharing the message, and to make an impact on life and really make a paradigm shift in medicine. If only there was a foundation whose sole mission was to increase awareness to the public and to doctors. If there was such a foundation, what would that be called? Who would be in charge, and how do people donate to this cause?
Yeah. Well, Sydney's our executive director, but she's pointing at her dad. It's called the Airway. It's called the Airway Revolution Foundation, and it's founded out of that spirit is to ultimately make it so that tens of millions of people breathe better and sleep better to experience the best quality of life that they could have. And so it starts with this documentary series, which will create an awareness amongst the people of the world that the impact of an airway disorder and resolving it can have on the quality of somebody's life. And the belief is that when people get behind and join our revolution by just sharing their story or following us, that those numbers will impact universities. So all of a sudden they change how they teach the future doctors of the world to include an understanding about airway disorders.
Yeah.
And then ultimately we have more well-trained doctors, so we have more accessibility to care and better care. And that's the hope, but it starts with a movement of the people. So really our goal is to lead a grassroots movement, and using the power of film. Our filmmakers have won 17 Emmy Awards. We have over 800 hours of footage, so many wonderful stories, and so we want people to follow us. You want to add to that?
No, I think you pretty much covered it, but if you can go, we have a new website launching in hopefully next week.
Yeah.
It will be next week, but airway-revolution.org, and you can find...
Let's put the link. Can we put the link up right here?
Great. Yeah, put the link. And
That's funny, right? Like, I'm pointing to it.
But we will have resources there for people, including this podcast. We'll put up there, and some videos, some other podcasts, and then that's just going to keep growing. And then we also have a collaborator page where people can go to see, who do we trust and who do we go to when we have questions about airway and health. So this documentary series is kind of going to be the start of this huge awareness piece for so
How do
many
people donate to this cause?
So you can go
Is there a link for that? Can we put a link for that?
Link.
Even if it's $1.
Even if it's $1, really, it's a small nonprofit and it can go a long way.
It's more about the awareness and the sharing and the people that are
building
on
that
board.
grassroots
Be part of the
movement.
community, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's put a link there.
Yeah, it's on our
Gigi,
website.
We'll put that up here.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, quite honestly, having $1 million $1 gifts would be
Amazing.
Not only the impact of the financial dollars,
How
but
easy should that be?
Showing leadership that,
Yeah.
hey, we need to change how we're teaching doctors. That would be the response. That would be better than one gift of $1 million.
Yeah.
I'd much rather have a $1 million $1 gift.
Yeah. So let's do, whoever's watching this, let's make a goal that we get 1 million views on this episode, right? So if you care about this cause, let's get 1 million views on this episode. And everybody that watches this, so that means you have to share to as many people as you can. Because if 100 people were to watch this episode and you each share to as many people as you can, we can reach 1 million viewers pretty fast, right? And then if each one of you are listening, just click this link and donate $1.
Beautiful.
We can have $1 million dedicated to the foundation pretty easily without
be
hurting
amazing.
anyone's day.
Yeah.
It would be really easy and then really start to make a huge impact.
And if you're listening or watching this and you think that this doesn't impact your life, it impacts someone you love. I
Right.
promise you.
Yeah. So share it to 10 people,
Yeah.
you
Beautiful.
know, and all those people share it to 10 more and we can get there. That should be easy to do. That's my request. I want to talk about the documentary. I'm very excited. Obviously, we've been involved in that, and I've seen parts of it. We're looking forward to seeing a screening June 20th.
Yeah.
I can't wait for that. When do we expect that there will be everybody can see this documentary?
So it's coming. We're all in post-production. The series should be completed by this summer, and then we go to distribution to try to get a distribution deal. So once we have that going, then we'll be able to know when and where the world can see it. And we're excited. I mean, these are extremely talented storytellers. So I've seen a little bit more than you've seen, and I've been at every filming day, and I thought I've seen this.
Right.
No, I was blown away.
No, I can't wait.
I was learning more.
Yeah.
I was in tears. I'm really excited to share this with the world, and I think it's going to have a huge impact.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I think this will make a huge impact, change the world as we know it.
Yeah.
Really, it's very exciting. It's a time for a paradigm shift in healthcare.
Yes.
You know, what is the financial burden of airway problems? You talked about missing days off school, but missing days out of work, right? All the doctor visits, all health crisis, health problems, medications, relationship issues, so much. I mean,
So
the
much.
impact is
Mental
probably
health.
mental health. We're talking about trillions of dollars of burden for this very one epidemic of small jaws. You know, it's your small jaws and everybody has it, including me.
Yeah. I mean, even if you and two associates or two partners did double jaw surgery, I mean, maybe you're going to, I don't know, reach 250 to 500 people in a year. And we're talking about well over
A billion
a billion people
Yeah, so we
that
need more
have
surgeons
obstructive sleep apnea.
to do this.
We need more
Yeah.
surgeons, and we need the doctors of tomorrow to know about this so that we can
Right.
start preventing this.
Yeah,
as
preventing
well.
it. All the pediatric dentists, pediatricians, psychiatrists, school teachers,
Yes.
anyone, parents.
Yeah.
You
New
know.
parents, they should know the red flags to look for.
Let's
And
get it early.
yeah.
And I think this, the spirit of the documentary and the whole project is positive. It's not to listen. I didn't know. I missed it in my own child, so I could be so hard on myself. But I was doing the best with what I knew. I just know that we need to help people do better in the future. But I think the orthodontic profession is very defensive. I think the orthodontic profession was born out of this concept of straightening teeth.
Yeah.
And that is a profession, but there's another profession that maybe needs a different nomenclature. Maybe it's growth orthodontics, where you get in with children at age 2, 3, and 4 and change the structure of their bones, of their head and the face, so that they can breathe better. That's a very different goal than traditional orthodontics. So I'm not faulting orthodontics for starting to treat children when all the teeth are in,
Right.
because that's efficient for getting straight teeth.
Yeah.
But it's not efficient for developing a better airway. So let's have a school of thought that trains people to treat children early.
And let's stop denying the impact of extractions and restrictive orthodontics. I think there's still so much denial. And I know it's controversial for me to say this, and some people are going to be triggered by it. But is that fair to say that there's a lot of denial and people, lack of acknowledgement?
I think it's very fair, and I think people don't have to apologize for what they did yesterday. Just say we're going to do better going forward.
We can do better. It's all, the mama mentality is to be the best version of ourselves every day. And one of the things Kobe said the best is, if he missed 7 shots, the next shot was the next shot, right? and those 7 shots were behind him. And the same with his successes. If he won 7 games, the next game was a game, and those 7 wins were behind him. And I think I really love that message. It's that, past success doesn't mean future success, and past failure doesn't mean future failure. And it's such a strong message, I think, for human behavior.
Yeah, and stop spending so much time denying. When you put the pieces together, the picture shows that smaller arches, restricted tongue space is not helping somebody to be healthier.
Right.
So if we're in that space, let's create more tongue space. Let's encourage forward growth of the face. Let's encourage nasal breathing. It just makes sense. Why is it we're going to wait for 50 years to have studies that prove it? We know
makes sense.
enough.
Sometimes 1 + 1 = 2.
Yeah.
Right? Sometimes that's true.
Right.
I know we got to wrap it up, but I want to say it again. Call to action. Share this with 10 people.
Please.
Everyone that watches this, and we can get to 1 million people donating $1 each and really change the impact of healthcare. Just share with 10 people.
Thanks, Dave.
All right, you're very welcome. Thank you guys for coming here.
Thanks for having us.
I know I have some Dukies in the house.
Yeah.
Let's go, Duke.
We're gonna wrap it up with. Let's start with Sydney. Let's go ladies first.
Okay.
Greatest basketball player of all time.
Oh, well, my favorite is Jay Williams.
I like it.
Always has been, always will be. He
I
called me
like
on
it.
my bat mitzvah, so I feel a special connection to him.
That's amazing. Jay, if you're listening, share it with 10 people.
Yeah, please.
I'm going to ask you a question.
Yep.
So one nickname for Kobe Bryant is
Mamba.
Mamba. He has 2 other nicknames.
Bean.
That's his middle name.
That's his middle name.
Dad did his research before coming
Hold on. Got it.
I'll give you a Star Wars hint.
Ooh.
Sid?
Kobe-Wan Kenobi.
Kobe-Wan Kenobi is one others.
Okay.
And then Mr. 81.
Oh, I like that
We
one.
had 81
81
points.
points.
In a game.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to come here prepared with
Some trivia I
the
didn't
Kobe
even know.
questions. I feel
I like
really
it.
good that I got
That's pretty good.
the Kobe master. You know the more important things about Kobe. But you knew that he was going to go to Duke.
I did know that.
That was the
I
most
did know
important
that.
fact. We needed you to know.
He would go to Duke. He was going to play for Coach K in college. He played for him in the Olympics.
Yeah.
And your greatest of all time?
I've just always been a Johnny Dawkins fan. My dog currently is named Dawkins, and
That's awesome.
Johnny was the beginning of Duke reclaiming its basketball prowess. And I was there when Johnny was a freshman, and he was a great player. Went on to play for the 76ers.
Yep.
Become an all-star, and now I think he's the head coach at University of Central Florida.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, and your favorite?
Kobe.
Great.
Kobe.
Happy 24th episode.
Yeah,
Yeah.
happy 24th.
Happy
What a special
24th.
one.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Make sure to subscribe, share, like, comment, and we'll see you next time.
Thank
Great.
you.